Hello to all our viewers. My name is Anna Maria Villa. Welcome to Una Bella Chiacchierata, meaning a nice chat. And today, Una Bella Chiacchierata will be with Consul General of Italy in New York, Fabrizio Di Michele, and with President of the New York State Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America, Michele Cangiano Mente. We're going to get to know them a little bit and learn a little bit about their family values, their Italian family values. And it's really going to be a nice, fun chat. We hope that you enjoy. Come state? How are you?
Good. I'm
Very fun.
fine.
Thank you.
So
Looking forward to this bella chiacchierata.
I understand this is not the first time the two of you have met.
No, we've met twice already. The first time was back in June,
Yeah.
right after you came to this country, I believe.
It was my first public event, you know?
That's right. And you did very well, very well. And then we met again at the Petrosino dinner. And I also met your lovely wife at that time.
So. Indeed, indeed. I'm sure there will be many other occasions now that everything is reopening gradually.
Yes.
Finally.
Thank God. So I thought I'd start off by having the two of you tell us a little bit about yourselves. So let's start off with our guest, Il Console. Tell us a little bit about where you were born and raised. Let's start with that.
I was born in Palermo. And so half of my family is from Sicily, part from Palermo, part from the Trapani area. That's my mother's side. And my father is from Pescara, from Abruzzo. So all of his family is, let's say, spread over the region. He had many brothers and one sister who's still there. So I have, I don't know, maybe 100 cousins between Sicily and Abruzzo. It's exaggerating, but not that much. But I grew up in Palermo. I have to say, I do feel Sicilian, and I made my studies there. My friends, the long-time friends are there, or actually come from there. A few of them are still in Palermo, and usually are judges or lawyers. Very few businessmen, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And then actually I left Palermo for the time of the university. At that time I moved to Florence to study political science. But until I was a teen, basically I would travel to Abruzzo to see my family every year, just once per year during the summer. But I would spend most of my time with my Sicilian family, the small and the enlarged, in the large version too.
Mm-hmm. And what were your grandparents from? Were they also from Sicily and Abruzzo?
Yeah, from the side of my mom, both of them were from Alcamo, the province of Trapani. Mm. And from the side of my father, my grandfather was from Pescara and my grandmother from Chieti, or anyway, that area. Mm-hmm. But whereas I recall very well the two grandmothers, because they've lived quite long. My grandparents, well, the Abruzzese died when I was just 1 year old, so I have no idea about him. I don't have any memories, just what I got from my father. The Sicilian grandfather, he died when I was 12, 13, so I have pretty good memories about him, including because, you know, the usually Sundays lunches were at my grandparents' house in Palermo. So it was a very, let's say, intensive and constant, I can say, occasional meetings put it like this, very traditional in a way. You know, the Sunday meetings were a must.
Or must. Il pranzo.
Until I started to get fed up. It was when you're 18 and you're a friend. On Sunday, you want to do other stuff.
What were some of the things you would do on Sundays as a teenager?
Well, I would do sports a lot. And cinema was the typical Sunday's activity, whereas Saturday was about discotheque and, you know, getting out with friends.
Typical.
Very typical.
Did all the teenagers, did they go to the square and congregate at the square and meet there before they went to?
Because Palermo is a quite a big city, so this is something still happening in a small city in Sicily, like in the north, because I've been going around a lot, and in the small cities or villages, La Piazza is still a key element, you know, of cohesion, of meeting. People get out and know that they will find other people there. No, in Palermo was different. I would have my own group of friends, different group of friends actually. A group linked to the school, another group linked to the basketball because I used to play professional basketball, another group, you know, created through different friendships and friends of friends. And so I would go out with different people. We would all have motorbikes. I would have a Vespa. And that's what I recall of those weekends. I mean, mingling a lot, changing people a lot, and looking for girlfriends, of course, and and doing stuff that every teenager does. In my case, it was until I was 16. It was more difficult because I would play and basketball and train every day besides studying, and then in the weekends there was the match. So that meant pretty busy planning of my week and my weekend. But it was fun, of course, because even, you know, the team, the very belonging to a sport team was to me, for that age, was I think the most important experience. That's why I'm always been pushing my children to do team sports, not only sports, but sports together with others, just to
Do
learn.
they play soccer? Do they play soccer?
Yeah, of course. I still do. I still do. You might be surprised. And
my son plays on weekends, and my grandsons play on weekends. So yes, I became a soccer mom when my son was 6 years old.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
Even when I was playing professionally basketball, at many occasions to play soccer with friends. It was more for fun, but there was much, of course, more widespread, and there were many more occasions. And this, I've continued to do it after I left basketball. I quit basketball. Soccer has remained the sport that I practiced all my life until last year, actually. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, we do have a team. We play every week the calcetto, the small soccer, which is probably better for those of my age. But there is also a real soccer team with the youngsters whose level is very good, very good. So since I've been here, I have to say, no time for any sport. That's pity.
There's a soccer team down at Chelsea Piers in Manhattan. They have teams there. So if you ever find yourself that you need something to do, you can go down to Chelsea Piers.
Look, I met friends here that they are organizing. They are supposed to organize matches every week. So I'm waiting for invitations, but the last time it happened, I of course had to decline for professional engagement. The reality is that it's very difficult for me to find the time, including the weekend. So it's a pity. This is something I'm missing right now, physically and morally.
That's great. So do you, how does it feel to be in, I guess you could say, the basketball capital of the world?
I'm gonna watch the Knicks very soon. I'm looking forward to that because when I was a teen, I really followed the NBA regularly. So I mean, that's the place to be. Really, it's really fascinating. And then I like very much that, you know, just to get around and see people playing in the football, in the basketball courts, Central Park, and anywhere actually. And the few times I did sport since I arrived has been basketball with some youngsters in Central Park, close to my place. I think I risked my life. I pretended to be a young, you know, player, which I'm no longer, but it was a huge fun, really. And I like this fact that, you know, people just get together and play. So many different people, but too young for me, I have to say. I can't afford this to do this very often.
No, can't afford to get hurt.
The only good point is when you get free, you go. So you don't have to take an appointment. That's why I managed to play a few times with some of these teams.
So Michelle, where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York. It's now called Carroll Gardens section of Brooklyn. My mom was born in the same community. My dad was born in Greenwich Village. He lived on McDougal Street, he often told us. So my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, came from Palermo, and I had the opportunity to go there a few years ago. And I stood on the block where my grandfather lived. I saw the church where my grandfather attended, and I saw some of the grave sites of my great grandparents and my my great uncles. So I was in Palermo. It's a beautiful city. I didn't go to Trapani, where some of my cousins took a side trip there on that day, the day that we all went sightseeing. My father's parents came from the Naples area. I'm not exactly sure where, but I do know that my grandmother used to work on cameos because she often spoke about the cameo factories. So I never met my paternal grandfather. He was dead before I was born. My dad was one of 9 children, and he was the oldest boy. He was born here. My aunts that were older than him were born in Italy. So, and one of my aunts actually had to stay behind when the family came here because she had to take care of my great grandmother, because my great grandmother said, well, you're all leaving, who's going to be here? So she stayed behind and helped her grandmother. And then finally, unfortunately, when her grandmother passed away, she came to this country. So we have, I have one sister, and she still lives in the house that my parents bought in Brooklyn. And I went to school right across the street, and then from my house. And then later I taught at the same school, and I will say I was tardy almost every day because, you know, you always feel you have another 5 minutes. At the time, growing up, girls didn't engage in too many sports when we played, you know, jump rope, we skated on the streets, we rode bikes, but I was never, and then of course I went to dancing school. I mean, little girls always went to dancing school at the time. So I did ballet and tap and did a little acrobatics. So that's what, and then I went to college upstate New York. I went to New Paltz and I became a teacher, and I taught in Brooklyn for half of my career. And then I went over to the Bronx because I moved up north to Putnam County. And I've been living here for about 45 years. So I used to commute to the Bronx every day. And then I became an assistant principal in a middle school in the South Bronx. And it was an exciting time. It really was. And I have two wonderful children and a beautiful daughter-in-law. And my son and daughter-in-law gave me 4 fabulous grandchildren. They are absolutely wonderful. And the boys play soccer and the girls are beginning to learn. They're 7. So that's my background. As I said, my family, we do follow traditions. We do spend as much time together as possible on weekends. And that's about it. I enjoyed skiing. We used to go to Hunter Mountain to ski. We would go over to Great Gorge and then Mount Snow as I got braver. and we did that. And I played a little tennis, but I never really, I actually tried playing soccer. And then this woman was really running at me because I happened to have the ball. And I said, I can't do this because it was dangerous the way she was going to attack. So I played twice and then I coached after that. So that's me.
Well, Console, how did you start your career in diplomacy and what persuaded you to get into it?
I think since I was maybe 16 or 17, I had in mind an international career. And the idea of living, staying, working in the same place never really fit with myself. I don't know why. And basically, the choice of the university was already made in that direction. At that time, it was not clear which international path, but for sure, I wanted to try that path. And then, while studying at Florence in political science with international politics, a specialization, I realized very soon that, first of all, that rather than working in some NGOs, I would have preferred to work for my own country. And secondly, that the alternative, which were, still are actually international institutions, were much more difficult to pursue because it's a typical vicious circle that all of these organizations are asking you for experience to bring you in, and you're asking them to allow you to have the first experiences so you can start to have a serious CV. So already during my studies in Florence, I was part of a couple of NGOs doing activities basically in Italy. It was about information, but my dream was to travel to Africa basically and do stuff there. But it was very difficult. So that's why, for all of these reasons, when I finished the studies, it was clear to me that I had to try the diplomatic career. The diplomatic career is one of the most difficult competitive examination in Italy. But the good point is that you know what you have to do, what you have to study, you know which examinations that you have to pass. And then if you're good, you're lucky, because being good is not enough. I have plenty of very good friends and colleagues who didn't manage to enter. Then once you pass the examination, it's done. You have a beautiful career in front of you, which is very, by the way, changing, because diplomats in the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs are very few. We don't have a specialization, which means that we go from one place to another, from one activity or competence to another. And this is very refreshing, very challenging. And by the way, not even after less than 2 years after entering the career, I applied for the most difficult place then in Africa, which was Congo during the war. Wow. Because that was I had in mind. And by the way, these are the experiences that you can do when you don't have a family, honestly. So I entered the career, I was 26, 25, and then 26 when I really formalized the entering the career. But at 28, I was already in Congo as a deputy head of mission during the war, and that was still remains, from a personal point of view, the most formative, challenging, also rewarding experience. But also professionally was incredible, because at that age you overnight realize you have plenty of responsibilities vis-a-vis Italian citizens, for instance. But also, you know, we used to do lots of development, humanitarian aid, and you know, Congo was and still is a country with plenty of troubles and problems and challenges. So it was a incredible experience, because at the end of the day, I was exhausted, but I knew all I had done. I could do a list. It was very concrete. Whereas, of course, in Rome, by definition, some of the work is more bureaucratic. That's why I didn't want to stay for too long, and I applied as soon as it was possible to go abroad and to go to Africa.
How about in New York? What's that like compared to the Congo?
Look, I think it's a long way now from Congo to today in many respects. I managed to create 2 families, not only one. So I have 3 children. I have traveled a lot, and I spent lots of time in the European Union, which is a very important institution, of course, for us in Italy. But above all, New York, it's an easy choice. Everybody would like to come to New York. Okay, it's very competitive selections to get here, and I feel really lucky to be here. But apart from New York, the most challenging part for me was that after dealing for more than 20 years with politics, of foreign policy, basically, because I was in Rome before coming here. I was the head of the directorate unit dealing with Russia and former Soviet Union countries. Wow. Before that, I was the Italian envoy for Syria and the anti-ISIS coalition. Before that, I was in Brussels dealing with Middle East, basically, for
Wow.
many years. So coming here and doing the consular job is a complete change, total change of activity. I used to be a counselor of the minister, staying behind, writing notes, or maybe suggesting things to do, to say. Here, not only I'm in one of the capitals of the world, but I'm on the forefront. I'm the boss. So, and above all, the activity is no longer the traditional diplomatic activity of foreign policy. There are the consular services, which are still our core business, and I have an important team also dealing with it. But there is much more. There is the Italian projection in business, in culture, the academic world, our communities, the Italian American associations. Let's say it's a never-ending discovery for me, the potential of my role in New York. I realized that until the very first day, I would be meeting new people and discovering new stories or new possibilities, actually. Because that's why I'm here at the end of the day, is to promote the Italian interests and at the same time, which is something I really cherish very much personally, is to get closer and closer to the Italian American communities, which is not, it's immediate when you arrive here, right? It's part of the job, but it's not so easy to understand when you are in Rome what it's all about. I have to say, if you ask me what's the most surprising feature since you've been here, it's not New York. We knew New York. I knew New York. It's despite COVID, this is the city of energy and creation and culture and many, many, many more things. But the real striking discovery to me here was the richness in any sense, human, professional, in any respect, of our Italian American community. That's a
vibrant culture.
Really still keen to work on and meet people and listen to stories. And I'm always really excited, sometimes even moved, to listen how people came here through very difficult times, facing hardships, sometimes the unknown, literally, and then they build up families, life, and success in their lives, and what they have become today. Them, their children, their grandchildren, and that's why every time I meet people, I'm really curious to know about their stories. And we have so many Italian Americans in key positions everywhere, business, economy, finance, academic world, politics by definition. And that's what really still one of the parts where I think I see more potential, and I'm more keen in learning. Definitely so.
So Michelle's presidency is very focused on family values, and I'll let Michelle mention that a little bit. And we had talked about having an interest in the family values of the Italians in Italy and the family values of the Italian Americans here, and what does that look like? And I'll let Michelle talk a little bit about that, what her version of the Italian values are of here, of the Americans, Italian Americans, that is.
It's changing. When I was growing up, we went to Grandma's house for dinner on Sundays, every Sunday. And it was a time when all of my aunts and uncles and cousins would get together. and we would discuss how we spent our week, or and if anyone had a specific problem, then it was just, it was discussed. And so that there was always a helping hand when if you had a problem. We did that with one, early enough so that we would be with my maternal grandparents, and then we would go for coffee with my paternal grandmother. My grandmothers happened to live around the corner from one another in Brooklyn, so we all lived close by. And it wasn't until a little later that the family started spreading out. When we did live close by, we definitely did spend holidays together, even when we had moved out of the neighborhood, as we would call it, and still call it. It's still the neighborhood, and we still go there for special events. I was speaking with a friend of mine the other day, and he went to, there's one restaurant left in Brooklyn that sells panels and rice balls. And it's the only Sicilian restaurant left in Brooklyn. So many of us still go down there to pick up the specialties. And although, I can make some of these things, they're not the same as going down to Union Street and buying them from Ferdinando. And he's still there. I mean, it's amazing. I have no idea how old he is, but he's still there. And he still directs his sons in making the panels and making all of the goodies that we did. And when I was in Sicily, our driver stopped at a little neighborhood, and we went in, and I just said to my daughter-in-law, I said, "This is what we get in Brooklyn. Taste it." And she now is a fan of panels. But that's a part of it. And one of the things I did want to say was that when I was growing up, I had the option to become a teacher or a nurse. I did not have the option to go into any other field. As my father always said, you will become either, and there was no question that my sister and I would go to college, but you would become a teacher or a nurse, because no other occupation was considered for women at the time. And he always believed that we should be able to support ourselves, and that there was no question that we would go on to with our education, but it was either a teacher or a nurse. And fortunately, I did not raise my children that way. My daughter went to California, and she was interested in the film industry, and then decided that she would come back to New York, and has not pursued it formally. She's done side things, but she formally is not in teaching or a nurse. So things are changing. They are changing, but as I said, we did spend a lot of time with family, the extended family. There were times when, just go for a ride, and we'd end up going to one of my aunt's houses or an uncle's house. And I had cousins that were a lot older than me, and we would even go over to that just for coffee at night, and, and just to visit for a few hours. So, but that's not the traditions that seem to be going on today. We always had dinner together. in my nuclear family. We did not have separate dinners. We waited for my dad to get in from work, and the four of us would sit down and have dinner. And then when my granddad moved in with us, the five of us sat down together. It's not always that way. We're running out for sports now. And I mean, when I was raising my own kids who had practice, who, you know, somebody had practice, someone had band practice, someone had soccer practice, basketball practice. My daughter was a basketball player, and she coached basketball, and she also she played basketball, and she's coaching again this winter. She'll be coaching girls basketball, so she really enjoys it, and it's just not the same. It's just not the same in that we keep some traditions alive, but others, unfortunately, with the lifestyle we have today, it's not possible to always follow those traditions. But we share them with our families so that they are aware of those things that we knew when we were growing up.
And Console, how about you? As far as the family traditions and family values, what are the things that make you smile, make you laugh, make you cry about your parents and your grandparents? Spending time, you know, a pranzo or a cena, nelle piazze, nelle feste. Like, what are some of the things that um, are nice memories, you know, that you miss, that you hope that Italians all over the world continue to hang on to?
Okay, I have to go back those years when the Sunday lunch was devoted to, you know, meeting up all together with my mother's parents, so my Sicilian grandparents in Palermo, which was basically repeated until my grandfather died, and I was 12, I think. And I can smell the cream with cinnamon that my
Yeah.
prepare for us, and would hide in many different places that I would find anyway, to eat it before the lunch. And then something else I can recall is that my grandfather was a huge fan of, you know, the Formula Uno Grand Prix, you know, the Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
And when there was the competition, which was not every Sunday, but it happened to be, you know, regular basis. At 3 o'clock, the house would turn into a church. We had to move out, or if willing, stand still in the room, but possibly invisibly, grandfather to follow the Gran Premio, the Formula 1, which is where I actually inherited my great passion for motors, for be it cars or motorbikes. And then I spent lots of time in that house when I was a kid. Both my parents used to work, so sometimes I would stay there and play alone. Basically, I had my old tournament of soccer. I was playing 5 different teams, and it was very serious stuff. I would, you know, sign down all the teams, all the results, and I would do basically the journalist, the player, the goalkeeper, everything was there. And Palermo and Juventus would usually ultimately win. That's the two teams. So I have plenty of memories also for the summertime, because in the summertime until my grandfather was alive, we used to live together in the same place by the seaside. It was a house by the sea, literally, in the province of Trapani, where I grew up again, and we would be together. And there, with my uncles, my fathers, we would go fishing by boats and share a lot of time also in you know, dinner or lunches with fresh fish. These are the most beautiful, actually, memories of my life, including because in the same period, 1 year after my grandfather passed away, my father got sick, got a ictus, a very bad one. I risked his life. And actually, at that time, my uncles were preparing me and my sisters to the loss of my father. He's a tough skin and still there. He's 99 now. But that meant that most of my memories, then it's like if they stop, because after, you know, losing my grandfather and the illness of my father, I was already 13, and I was already getting out of the home. My memories are more related to friends than family. And there was no longer the place to be together. It was during the winter, the Sundays lunches, and during the summer, that big house for all of us, where also cousins and uncles and aunties would come and stay together. So it's something that I've been missing afterwards, for sure. Now, what we have done, actually, thanks to COVID, I guess, but we have created 2 chat lists. I have 2 chat lists. One is called Di Michele, and I have all the cousins from Abruzzo in there, wherever they are living. And then one other is called Fundaro, which is my mother family name, and there are all the Sicilian cousins. And we are regularly in touch. And it's incredible because before that, we would meet up very rarely all together, very rarely. During the summer, sometimes at Christmas, but I mean, for me already it's difficult to go back to Palermo. If I go back, I have a few days, I have too many things to do, too many people to meet. So this is allowing us, has allowed us actually to reconnect. It's not a daily or even weekly chat, but we are there again, and there is a lot of fun with both families actually, but it's only cousins. It's generational, I guess.
Do you, in my family, there's a lot of the emphasis on respect. So usually the younger siblings, the younger brothers and sisters have to call the older brothers and sisters, you know, or the younger aunts and uncles have to call the older for the holidays. Do you still have that as well in Sicily with your family, or do they, everybody kind of calls everybody?
No, there is no such a thing, I have to say. Everybody calls everybody. I'm not always very good, I have to say, in this. My mom is complaining, but she gets used to that. But there is no expectation that somebody should call somebody else. I've been very, very often in touch with my sister in the past year because she went through a very difficult period, my little sister. Usually I would stay more in touch with my elder sister because we were closer, also because of the age. And basically, I'm always blaming my mom because she says, I don't call you because you are busy. And I tell her, but if you don't call me, how do you know that I'm busy? And if I'm busy, answer. It's not a big deal, right?
I think that's all moms do that. Yeah. All moms do that to their children.
Yeah. But No, but the nice thing is that she's basically blaming me because she's not calling me because I could be busy.
Right.
That's the
I do
game.
the same thing with my son.
You do?
I do. I'll contact him if I have something that I really need to talk to him about, or I rarely go down other than on the weekend, and I will not interfere with his soccer game in the morning on Saturdays. And I just, I make sure he gets his exercise in. But I rather he call me, because then I know, we can talk, and he's not busy, because I don't want to interrupt him while he's working, and or with the kids. He doesn't have unlimited time to spend with his children, because he is working, and so I wait for him to call me. So mothers are the same all over. What can I tell you?
So are there family activities that were traditions in your family, in both of your families? Like every year, every season, fare le pomodore, go and collect the grapes for the wine, making cheese, anything like that in particular? Anything related to the fishing industry, or since
Not
like
really in my case, I have to say. Not really. I mean, when I was young and during the summer, at the end of the summer, I would go beginning of September, picking grapes or tomatoes. It was more about friends or also some cousin, but it was not something really belonging to the family. It was a nice experience to do then. And I recall some, part of my enlarged families where, I don't know if still now, but for sure then they would prepare the tomato sauce for all the year, because all the tomatoes they would pick up, and then I have this distinct memory of this huge
Pots?
barile.
Where sauce was cooking, but was not. Let's say this was really the larger family. There's some Colorontes. I don't even remember, but it's there. It's in my mind. So I was part of that for a few years when I was younger. But in Palermo, this doesn't exist, of course, because this does belong much more to the countryside. So in Palermo, we would ask for the fresh tomatoes from the province, buy to the supermarket.
Well, my grandmother and my mom and my aunts would make the tomato sauce for the entire year. My grandparents had a house outside of the city in Deer Park, actually. And they would not only would they make tomatoes, they also did peaches, and they had, and mushrooms. We would pick the mushrooms, and they did something very strange. They used to put a quarter, when quarters were silver and dimes were made of silver, and they would put them in the pot, and they boil up the mushrooms. And if the quarter stayed silver, then they were fine, the mushrooms, and we ate them. But if it turned black, we used to throw out the entire pot of mushrooms, because that meant there was a poisonous mushroom in there.
Oh, boy.
So, and we all survived. We didn't get sick. So I guess everything was all right. But I remember them having to throw out some parts of mushrooms. But some of the brothers and sisters of a lodge in Eastchester, they were talking about doing this, and we're thinking we're going to have a sauce making function, and we're all going to get together and make our sauce for the year. How's that? There were about 5 of us that had said that we'd be willing to do this. So I'll let you know how it turns out.
Yeah, it's interesting how some things, came here. I guess the older the parents were, there's more of those older traditions came over to the United States. Now that it's more modern, let's say Italy, it's not lost, but there's less of that interaction than there was back in the day, right? Yeah. My parents were older, so I remember all of this stuff, everything, the tomatoes and the grapes and la mustarda. Did you guys have la mustarda in Palermo? It's based from the grapes. It's called like a mustard. It's a reduction, and it's a thicker consistency, less sweet, and oh my God, yeah, all of that stuff is.
Not really.
No, la mustarda dell'uva. Oh, gee. That was big in Abruzzo, especially in Abruzzo, very big.
You would eat it as the sweets, or
It's like the outside of the grapes. It's like the skin of the grapes, and it's crushed, and it's reduced and to like a paste. It's like a paste. After they squeeze all the wine out of it,
yeah.
they have the remaining, and that remaining, they said, questo è buono. Let me make some la mustarda with this. Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Is it like do you use it like a jelly, or what?
Yeah, it's a spread. It's a spread,
Oh,
and it's the same thing as it just has very little gelatin, if no gelatin at all. I don't think it has any gelatin in it. It's just literally this. It's a very well homogeneous spread of the grape tritata. It's like it's how do you say tritata in English? It's mashed together.
okay.
But it's wonderful, yeah. But oh, anyway, I'm getting homesick here. So what?
I'm getting hungry here.
You make me hungry. I know, Madonna mia.
Yeah, me too.
We our parents have always given us lessons, right? And in Italy, in my experience, my parents coming from, my parents were born. They went through the World War II. They did, they got married older, so they were older. And they would always refer to gli antichi. Gli antichi dicevano. The old people used to say, old meaning antique, like the generations before us. They would. Do you have any of those sayings from your parents where they would say, gli antichi dicevano, this, that, and the next thing? Like any lessons that they passed on to you, whether it's in Sicilian dialect or whether it's just an Italian.
Really about, in my case, it's not really about antiques or but it was about previous generations, and it was very much about the experience of the war, the Second World War. And my father lost an elder brother during the war. He was a teen during the war, and he has kept this very distinct memories about what is being poor, starving, and importance for the family, to be protected. My mom is younger, so she was a child during the war, despite the fact that her father was a military pilot, but she doesn't have those kind of memories. But there again, it was through her parents, so my grandparents, that this I would call it more than a teaching. It was a habit, a mentality for people who knew what hardness was about, hardships of any kind.
Yeah.
And of course, already my generation was a lucky one, taking many things for granted. the following generations are even worse. My children's generations, it's a disaster to me because it's worse than rented. That, I guess, it's inevitable. You know, it's a cycle, and I always hope we don't have to go back to violence for people to realize how important it is to preserve peace, and how important it is to preserve also social peace and stability, which is a much, if you want, a bigger challenge today for many countries, including Italy. But yes, I would say that it was not about the antics, but it was about a period of life and the teachings from that period. And I have interiorized this very much. There was a saying that my mom and grandmom, the Sicilian though, so would repeat, that I sometimes, without realizing, tend to say to my smaller, the latest born, let's say. And the phrase was, when I was not eating something, she would say, in Africa I bambini muoiono di fame.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
We all heard that one.
And for me, in a way, this would work. It was putting me some sense of guilt. My children are much smarter, and they would say, I'm not saving any life if I don't finish my plate here. So that's something, in a way, which stayed in my mind. It was really about the experience of wanting, lacking stuff, which belongs to another generation. And my generation, but my parents' generation for sure, their grandparents even more, much more. And this is disappearing. It's very hard to convey this stuff, even in words. It's very hard.
One thing I'm really happy about that's happening in Italy is, and this has been going on for a while now, where the dialects are coming up. They're up and coming. In other words, it's cool to know your dialect. And I have two nephews, and they when they text, they tend to text in dialect now. Not even, it's hard enough to text in English or text in Italian. Now they text in dialect. And there's like this whole movement, and it's been going on for quite a few years now, to revive and use and to spell out the dialect. Because as you know, with dialect, it's mostly spoken, right? And I thought that was really cool. You know, I thought that was that's a great thing that this new generation is actually grabbing onto this, the old language of the dialect and making it theirs and using it and changing it and addirittura the text language in dialect, it's like, oh my God. So we can't lose too much hope. There's still hope for the, the younger generation.
I think that's more a sense of identity, that the kids are identifying with the regions that they come from. And therefore, they're going back to the dialects. I mean, my grandparents spoke in dialect, which is why my parents didn't speak Italian in the household. It was different. My father grew up and he learned Napolitan, and my mother was Sicilian. So only under extreme duress, when they didn't want us to understand what they were saying, would they speak Italian to one another, because we spoke English, and I feel I'm really sad about that, because I never had the opportunity to really learn. I do understand the Sicilian dialect, I will say, because my grandmother would explain as she was going, because she did have somewhat of a command of the English language. So when she would say something, I'd say, I don't know what that is. and she would, I don't know what that is, and she would try and explain it to me. So I did have some understanding of the Sicilian dialect. And then of course, I have friends who um, have migrated to this country and they spoke Italian. And so I would learn a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's more of an identity going back to the dialect.
Mm.
Uh,
I think, yeah, you're
you
right.
know,
You're right. And it's
um,
wonderful. I think it's great. I think it's terrific, but so Console is this was a pleasure uh having you as our guest. I hope we can do this again and maybe pick another topic. And Michelle, thank you so much uh,
oh,
as we keep moving forward with our family values for her presidency. She's going to focus more and more on that. And is there anything in particular either one of you or both of you would like to just say to our audience, who is going to be predominantly the Italian Americans and the Grand Lodge of New York State? Un saluto, a salute, or just.
Michelle, you want to start?
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing this time with us this morning. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you better. And I hope you are, that you're excited with your appointment here to New York. And we look forward to working with you. And to those who are watching, come to learn your Italian heritage, understand what your grandparents or your parents went through to come to this country. I know my grandfather had a college education in Italy and came here and ended up driving a bread truck. And then later on in his life, he worked as a watchman in a garage. I mean, and I do remember going down, I'd say to my grandparents, my mother and dad, and I'd say to them, I have to go work with grandpa. And I would say, back, the way my grandfather would tell the cars to park, and I would stand there with him and say, backa. And I mean, that's a memory that is with me. I'll never forget it, and it's just, it's learn your heritage, learn about your families, find out what went on with them, how they came into this country, why they left the old country, and celebrate it, because we are proud Italian Americans. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle, for your words, also because I couldn't agree more than with you. And besides saying ciao to everybody listening, I have more of a kind of objective for myself, which I will never be able to pursue without, the support and involvement of all the associations, starting with the OSI, of course. It's the will to try to find ways, actually, or hooks rather, to bring the younger generation of Italian American back towards the associations or back towards Italy. There are different ways, actually, to tackle this. Or ideally, bring them towards the Italian language, which is part of this heritage. And I believe that we should be working together. Looking at the next decades, what will become all this world of the Italian American associations? Because of course, youngsters are less interested. They have other passion. They are many more integrated. But there are many ways to rediscover the heritage and to preserve it afterwards. So if I can say something, is that this is still in my mind. I don't have clear ideas, on how to fulfill this. But I know for sure that this should be an objective to work for, and everybody in its own role should try to contribute in this direction. And as I think the consulate might be doing stuff for dragging youngsters in the Italian American community, if only to know what Italy is today and has become. And of course, the language to me, it's one of the most important um, priority. And there is a lot of work to be done there as well, because I know that many Italian Americans would say, yes, I would like to learn Italian, but it's not that important for my business opportunity, for my work, future. I understand that if they have to choose a language, they might end up choosing another, Spanish or even Chinese, I heard, So we need to find different entry points of ways to make them understand that this is their heritage, but they can get reached by this. And also be surprised, because Italy has changed a lot. And I just make an example. Every time I meet anybody, be it American or Italian American businessman here in New York, I tell them, do you know, because they would say, Italy, food, fashion, design, then history and art. And I tell them, do you know that Italy is exporting to United States mechanics, pharmaceuticals? There are 3-4 technological features. I mean, food is very low in this hierarchy. People don't know, because of course we are identified, and rightly so. I would not do without that, but we are identified with some issues, and we are much less known for many others. And I think there again, there is a huge potential where I would like to reach out to younger Italian Americans, for them to know, just for them to know.
Well, I know you have Michelle's support, you have my support on that.
Absolutely.
And so I hear you have to leave right now for another appointment, so we're going to let you run. We've probably already made you late already, but thank you so much. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you for this occasion. I really enjoyed a lot.
Thank you. We'd like to thank our viewers for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we look forward to our next episode of Una Bella Chiacchierata. A presto. Ciao.